All right, welcome to the Habits Workshop. My name is Mayo Oshin. I'm going to be the main presenter for you throughout this entire workshop. And here's basically what you're going to expect. We can go talk about the research. You can kind of think of me as a guinea pig. Basically, I scour all the books and I read the books and I study the research just because I'm weird and I guess I'm just really passionate and I really just enjoy the theory. But what is more important to me and what I really get more excited about, what I really want to help you with, is the practical side, because we can talk about the theory of the science of behavior change, how you can build habits, how you can be more productive and achieve your goals or whatnot. But at the end of the day, if it's not practical, if you can't apply it into your life, then there's no point. So I'm all about being practical. I'm all about actually having ideas that you can apply in your life and actually get results. The second thing you're going to expect from this workshop is zero fluff. In other words, we're not going to waste any time, just trying to talk about unnecessary details, unnecessary stories, unnecessary research, unnecessary information. I've really taken time out to strip away any aspects of the information out there that would just be irrelevant to helping you achieve your goals. Anything that's not going to be practical, that's not going to get real results, I've done that work for you by stripping away the fluff and all the noise from what actually works and what you can apply. And the third thing to expect is proven science. So everything is going to be research backed, and it's basically a blend of research, the works of people who are top performers in different fields, plus the fact that I've basically been a guinea pig and I've basically tested a lot of these things out in real life for results for myself, with my health, with my fitness, with just so many other habits I've formed over the years as well. So we will only talk about the essential ideas that you can quickly apply in your life for real results. So with that being said, I hope you have a piece of paper with you, because we're going to be going through so many different practical strategies. What I do want to say first off is that no, I'm not going to promise any sort of overnight results. It is possible, but it's probably not likely that you will overnight lose 10 pounds or overnight become proficient at your field, whether you're as an athlete or a musician or an entrepreneur or just a professional. So it just, various factors come into play. How committed are you? What's your level of experience? What's your current lifestyle? How persistent are you? So what I recommend you do before we get started is that you go into this with the mindset of finding what works for you and sticking to it. So there's going to be a lot of strategies that you're going to come across throughout this workshop. The key here is to pick one that actually does work for you. And I want you to focus on also picking one particular habit that you want to develop throughout this next couple of weeks. So you can test that one strategy from the workshop with the one habit, and you're just really focused. So you get to see how it works. And then once that works, and once you've established that new habit, or once you've, seen the results, then you can move on to the next one. So that way it's streamlined and it's efficient. So here's a general overview of what we're going to be going over. So the first section, we're going to be talking about basically creating new habits. So we're just going to go over just habits in general. What are habits? What's the science of how habits work? What are some strategies we can pull from the science as well that you can quickly apply? If you've read some of my work, you already probably have an overview of how science works, but it's just good to have that recap and see what we can pull from the science from strategies to build new habits, whether you want to start to go to exercise more consistently. You want to write more. You want to, make more sales calls in your business. You want to sleep earlier, wake up earlier, just be more productive at work. Whatever that new habit is that you've selected that you want to work on, this is the section where we're going to go over that. And you can see in brackets next to each section, I've basically given an indication of how long you can expect the talk is going to be. So, I mean, however you want to work with this, maybe you want to take notes for one section, pause, take a break, come back, listen to the next section, pause, take a break, and come back. So, section 2, we're going to be talking about habits that last. So we're going to be talking about how to build habits that basically last over the long term. So basically section 1 is kind of more about getting started and just the new habit itself. Section 2 is talking about the different strategies that we can use to cement, to make it permanent. So you're not in this New Year's resolution symptom problem where the first, 3 months, 4 months, you're consistent with exercise, but then by October, what am I even saying October? By July, most people are pretty much not consistent anymore with their health plans and stuff. So here we're talking about how to actually cement those habits, how to make them last over the long term so that it becomes a lifestyle and it just becomes a part of who you are. And it's not just something that you do for a couple of months and then just drop out. Section 3, we're going to specifically talk about bad habits and how to break bad habits. Now, bad habits are a different beast because they're complex by nature. There's a lot of intricacies that go into dealing with bad habits. So we're going to dedicate a little bit of time to just talk about different strategies to deal with bad habits, although sections 1 and 2 will give you some ideas as well. Then we're going to go into a bonus round, which just as a thank you for coming on this workshop, I'm going to share 3 additional ideas from science to help you basically stick to your goals over the long term. We're going to cover just 3 unique strategies that will really help you with your productivity and to just help you to perform better, whatever it is that you're trying to work on. So, before we get started, I just want to share a quick story of the Chinese bamboo tree. Now, the Chinese bamboo tree, basically, when it's a seed, the farmer puts the seed in the soil. And what happens is that the farmer basically waters the seed for not just a couple of months, but he actually waters the seed for 5 years. And the interesting thing about the Chinese bamboo tree is that it actually doesn't even sprout out of the seed for the first 5 years. So imagine a farmer just literally watering this seed without seeing any results. And then in the 5th year, all of a sudden, the seed sprouts and the bamboo tree grows for 4 feet a day, up to 90 feet within 6 weeks. So 90 feet, we're talking about maybe 8 stories of a building. So imagine that rapid growth that happens in such a short period of time. But for 5 years, there was nothing. There was nothing to show. The seed had nothing to show. So imagine for a second that you're that seed. Imagine for a second you are that seed that is in the soil, and you basically, you work hard, you graft, you grind, and you don't have really anything to show for it. People come up to you like, oh yeah, you've been exercising, I can't see you haven't lost weight. Or you look in the mirror, you can't see any results. Or you've been working hard in your business, you can't see the revenue to show for it. And you've just been working and working and working, and it just seems like discouraging because you can't see results. Well, This story kind of shows that it's just a matter of time before you have your breakthrough. It's just a matter of time before you just have your moment of just rapid growth that just happens quickly, after a period of time of being patient. So the question is, who are you? Are you the seed or are you the tree? Was the bamboo tree a seed or a tree? In other words, we tend to think of ourselves as what we can see. But the truth is, the bamboo seed was always a tree. It's just that it was just a matter of time before he manifested, or it manifested into its true form. And if you really think about it, over those 5 years, the roots were being laid in the soil. So the foundation was being prepared so that it would have such a massive growth. So the reason why I share this is that a lot of times when we want to start a new habit or we have a goal, we have a tendency to focus so much on the outcome, the results, and how we're going to get that instant gratification. You know, we live in a generation now, or in the world, where technology has made us basically accustomed to getting things quickly. You want some food, you just click on your phone, just a couple of clicks. If you want even to date someone, you've got apps that make that quick. If you want to watch a video, you can do that quickly. And so we've been trained for instant gratification, but in truth, this is really the correct mindset to go about with everything else, which is, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be patient with myself. I'm not going to judge myself. I'm not going to put pressure on myself. I'm just going to, get watered every day, just like the farmer, consistently. And over time, I trust that the results will show. And a lot of times what happens, especially with people with weight loss, is that you might actually start to get discouraged, but the people around you might actually start saying things like, wow, you've lost a lot of weight, you look different. And because you're so close to yourself, because you've been so obsessed with the minor details and stuff, you don't even see how much progress you've made. So again, you lose out on enjoying the journey because of the obsession of the outcome. So, which brings me to my next point. It's about consistently improving 1% better every day. So you can see that quote from Earl Nightingale: if you spend an extra hour each day of studying in your chosen field, you'll be a national expert in that field in 5 years or less. Now, you might look at that and say, well, that's unrealistic. But if you really think about it, if you put in 1% every single day over 5 years, that's compound interest. It's almost like investing or saving. You save £50 a month or $50 a month, and over the span of 10 months, that's 500. And it keeps growing and growing because of just the law of compounding, because of the fact that you're being consistent. So the same thing applies, just in the same way for savings, the same thing applies for habits. Small habits over a long period of time, or just over a period of time, makes a massive difference. Just like that bamboo tree or the seed, you water it every day, right? That dream you have, that goal you have, you just water it every day. It doesn't matter how small the water is, how big it is. You just consistently water it every single day. And over time, the results will show. Now, if you don't believe me, look at the maths, right? If you want to get 10 times better at something by the end of every year, all you have to do is dedicate to improving 1% for 232 days per year for 5 days a week, and you would still have 6 weeks off to slack off or have a vacation or chill with your friends. So you can just see the maths there, basically showing that all you have to do is show up consistently with whatever it is that you want to do, whether you want to improve your performance as an athlete or musician or an artist or creative or professional. You just need to show up 5 days a week for 232 days a year, and just make and stay consistent with it. And by the end of the year, you will be 10 times better than before. So, with that being said, let's get into talking about how to create new habits. Basically, how can we best create new habits? How can we fit them into our lives as well? Okay, so there's three key problems that we want to solve here, right? The first key problem that we want to solve is, why do some habits stick and others fail? So a challenge we have is that sometimes we find ourselves, maybe you start a new habit, you start to go for a run every evening, right? But then you also have this other habit where you wake up in the morning and you journal, like first thing in the morning. So why is it that your running habit, after 2 months, you always seem to drop off and fail, whereas when you're journaling, you're consistent? What is it about that journaling that makes it stick, and how can we use those principles to help with the running habit? The second thing is, what is the best way to get started? Now, there's 1,000,001 ways to get started, but the idea here is to talk about the best strategies to get started on a new habit, so you have that head start. You have that you have the proper head start, basically, that's required. And the third key problem we're going to solve is, how do I prioritize what to change? This is a question I get from my readers is, I want to learn to code, I want to learn to write, I want to exercise more, I want to deal with my self-doubts. There's multiple hobbies or goals we want to achieve at the same time. But the best thing to do, and what I've recommended at the start of this workshop, is to pick one habit to focus on. But I will show you how you can prioritize which ones to focus on, how to prioritize your goals, essentially. Before we get started, just so you're aware, there's going to be links to different resources below this workshop. So you're going to have links to different resources that I mentioned, whether they're books, you can read further reading material. All the studies are going to also be available throughout different articles in my website. So if you really want to, kind of cross-check what I'm saying, just to make sure that I'm not just talking, just gassing out here, or you just are genuinely interested in the academic research, then you could just go and just peruse through the articles on my website, and you will see in the footnotes section, I always reference to the sources, and you can always go there and read the actual original academic research itself. Finally, I just want to give credit where credit is due, and just thank these just a couple of names that come to my head. They've been incredibly influential for the ideas that I've learned and a lot of the research I found here as well. It's been inspired by them. They've also inspired me to personally experiment with these things as well. So I just want to give credit to B.J. Fogg, Stanford University professor, Kelly McGonigal, the author of Willpower Instinct, Charles Duhigg, author of Power of Habit, and James Clear as well, who's a behavior expert and scientist. Well, he's just a behavior expert, and Dan Buettner as well, National Geographic. So just want to give credit to these people for inspiring me with the ideas that I'm going to share with you here. Like I said, I'm not a expert per se. I'm just someone who is just really interested and passionate, and I just scour the information and distill into the best practical ideas to help you to basically achieve your goals. So let's dive in. Okay, so first off, let's make a distinction, right? In scientific terms, a habit is not what we think. So when we usually talk about habit, we always talk about, I just want to get into the habit of going to the gym. Well, what we actually mean is we want to get into the routine. A routine is conscious. So a routine is, I want to get into the habit of going to the gym. I want to have a routine of going to the gym. Now, scientifically, a habit is subconscious. It's automatic. It's something you don't think about. So if you have a habit of thinking negatively when you see someone who looks a certain way, well, that's subconscious. That's automatic. That's something that you don't really are conscious about. So it's just important that we make that distinction here before we move on. I will be covering both. I'll be talking about habits interchangeably. So I'll be talking about habits that are subconscious. I'll also be talking about routines that are conscious. But for the sake of this workshop, let's just assume the habits are both conscious and subconscious. But I just wanted to make that distinction before we move on. So this is the science of how habits work. Just again, if you've seen my work before, you've come across this material, it's probably just a reminder for you. But if you've not, our habits basically go through a 3 pattern loop. This was first popularized in Charles Duhigg's book called The Power of Habit. Again, I'll link that in the resources section. But basically, what happens is our habits go through a three patterns, right? So first, say your phone rings. So that's the trigger that basically starts the habit. It basically triggers you to initiates, it prompts, or it's a reminder. Then the next thing that happens is that there's a routine that follows that prompt. So it's the habit itself. So you hear the phone ring, then you pick up the phone. So that's the routine. Then there's a reward that usually follows that routine. So it's the benefit from doing the habit itself. So the reward actually reinforces the habit. For example, let's say you're very stressed out, the phone rings, you pick the phone, and the reward could be a stress relief from, gossiping to your friend or just talking to them or catching up with them. And if the reward is positive and it's beneficial, then the habit loop will be completed and it reinforces the behavior. And this cycle repeats over and over and over again until eventually it cements in your brain as a habit. There's actual neural pathways are formed as a habit. So this is the loop, and I want you to maybe jot this down to take this in account, because everything we're going to talk about is going to be based on this cycle or this loop. Any habit that you want to form, this is the loop that has to be formed to basically reinforce that habit. If you want to break a habit, it's the same thing. You can tweak different variables in this loop to ensure that you can create a new habit. Now, with that being said, how long does it actually take to form a new habit? Now, I'm sure you can relate to the short cartoon that I just sketched. I'm not the best. I'm just trying to get some ideas across. But okay, so you get this enthusiastic new fitness enthusiast, basically day one, 4:30 in the morning. They've got their new program. It's New Year's, it's probably January, and they're so excited. And in their head, because of what a lot of fitness gurus and a lot of self-help gurus have said, it's going to take them 21 days to form this new habit. So they wake up, they have the wrong expectations, but they're excited anyway. So they wake up at 4:30 a.m., really motivated, blah, blah, blah. Day 14 comes. They push it to 4 a.m. They're super motivated, super determined, doing their sit-ups, doing exercising, whatnot. Day 21 comes. The alarm rings at 5 a.m. and you can see my short diagram showing how the person basically shoots the alarm because they just want to get back to bed. They just can't be bothered to exercise anymore. So what this shows is what having the wrong expectation does. It basically prepares us to fail, because if you think it's going to take you 21 days to form a habit or to stay consistent with healthy eating or exercise, but at 21 days you don't feel that the habit is formed, then you're going to be discouraged and you're just going to fall back to your old ways. And this happens to people, again, New Year's resolution goals. It's the same thing, because we have the wrong expectations. So what you can see up, I said it's a 21-day myth, because it is a myth. The myth that it takes 21 days to form a new habit actually came from the work of a plastic surgeon. His name is Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Now, Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon in the 1950s, and he would basically conduct surgeries on patients, let's say nose job or, leg amputation, arm amputation. And what he noticed was that, say you got a nose job, it would take that person approximately a minimum of 21 days to notice the difference in the way they looked in the mirror. So, to change their image, their perception of themselves, it took them 21 days. Now, he later on documented his findings in a book called Cybernetics, which was published, I think, in 1960s, and it's gone on to sell, millions and millions of copies. But Dr. Maltz never said as a fact that it took 21 days to form a habit. As a matter of fact, he said it took a minimum of 21 days for them to notice that change in themselves. And guess what happened? So, self-help gurus, fitness gurus took that, and they started to popularize that in their seminars, in their motivational speeches, and then people just ran with it from there. So now we all believe that it takes 21 days to form a habit. So now that we've kind of cleared that myth up, how long does it actually take to form a new habit? Well, researcher name is Philippa Lally from the University College of London. Basically, her and her research team published their results on this in the European Journal of Social Psychology. So basically, they got a group of 96 people, and over a 12-week period, they told them to pick just one habit to focus on. I think there's different habits. Some was drinking glasses of water. Some was exercise. There was a variety of different habits. And the results came back, and what Philippa Lally and her team discovered was that on average, it took approximately 66 days to make a new behavior automatic. Now, remember what we spoke about, the difference before about habit being automatic and a routine. Well, automatic or automaticity, I don't know if I pronounced that properly, is basically how long does it take till it's basically something you just do on autopilot. So they found that on average it took 66 days. Some habits became automatic quicker than others. So, for example, if you're say you just want to drink a glass of water, right? If you want to make drinking one glass of water a day a habit, well, that will probably become more automatic or a habit probably in the first month, or it just become a habit quicker. But if you say you wanted to do something more complex, like you wanted to make the habit of, painting a picture a habit, or the habit of writing complex articles or complex essays or poetry, well, that will probably take longer because it's more complex. But overall, on average, they found it took 66 days to make a new behavior automatic. As a matter of fact, if I can remember from the research, the range of period, some people took 5 days, I think, and then all the way up to 268 days. So the range that was like the minimum to the maximum value was pretty wide. So you can expect your habit to take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a year or more to actually cement. But again, back to the foundation of what we spoke about with the 1% mindset and this attitude of consistency is that we don't want to worry too much about these things. We just want to show up every day and put in your reps. You want to, if you've been weightlifting before, you just show up, you do your reps, you go home, and you rest. You come back, you do your reps, you go home. You don't want to worry too much about, how long is it going to take? Because, say for instance, you start a new habit and you're consistent for 2 months and you drop off, and then you restart again. I mean, there's so many different variations. So we don't want to get too caught up in how long it's going to take. But if you want the science behind it, expect about 66 days or a minimum from a couple of weeks up to a year for your habit to actually become automatic. So there's 3 key questions that we want to kind of address here that will make it easier for you to take action. Now, this first came to my attention through the work of Stanford University professor B.J. Fogg with his Fogg model. And basically what he said in his model is that for a behavior to take place, 3 elements need to come together at the same time. So these 3 elements are, number 1, you have to actually be capable of taking action. So are you capable of doing the said task or goal or habit? So for example, I'm like 5'8", 5'9". So if my goal is to play in the NBA or to become a proficient top athlete in swimming, well, that's probably not going to happen because of my height restrictions, right? So that habit you want to form or that goal, are you actually physically capable of doing it? And it's not even just about physically being capable, it's about just in terms of environmental factors. So you say for instance you want to go to bed at 11 p.m. let's say, if that's your goal. Well, let's say you get back from work on average at 11:30. Just by circumstance, you're just not going to be able to take action on the new habit you want to form. So that's the first aspect there. Are you actually capable of doing it? The second thing is, do you want to do it? So this is I'm going to just stay on this for a little bit and just be patient with me because this is really important. This is the foundation moving forward. A lot of times we pick habits for the wrong reasons. We don't have a strong why or a strong reason for why we want to do that. You say you want to lose weight, you want to lose 10 pounds, you want to build 10 pounds of muscle, you want to make 50,000 pounds in revenue for your business. You want to get promoted, you want to be a partner in your company. Well, okay, that's all great and all, but do you have a clear idea of why? What is driving you for this habit? How important is it to you? But what is driving you? Research has shown that people driven by extrinsic motivation. So extrinsic motivation is motivation that's driven by external things. I would kind of classify them as being shallow reasons. So you got, just you want people to like you, you want validation, you want to prove to someone, you want to gain self-respect. It's just a lot of shallow reasons to do things. Intrinsic motivation, my interpretation of that is just more, you're doing it for yourself. It's just for your self. You're not trying to prove anything to anyone. You're also probably doing it for more philanthropic reasons. Maybe you're trying to have a wider impact in society. You're trying to help other people. So one is more shallow, the other isn't. I'm not here to judge and say, yeah, you want to lose weight in the next 3 months because you're going to the beach and you want to look good and you want to impress somebody of the opposite sex. That's all fine and good. However, what I am challenging you to do is think about how you can introduce intrinsic reasons in addition to if you do have any sort of shallow reasons as well. But how can you add on intrinsic reasons? Because it's going to be tough. There's going to be periods when you're going to just not want to go to the gym. There's going to be periods when you just don't want to work on your business. So what is going to pull you through, like I said with the story of the bamboo tree or the bamboo seed, what's going to pull you through those periods when you're just not seeing results? When you're working hard, you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, but you can't see results. Well, if it's extrinsic motivation, or if it's reasons that are just not strong, well, you're most likely going to drop off. And the reason why a lot of people give up is because of this. They don't have a strong reason, a strong why to stay consistent. It's the same issue you see with people who just train for marathons, right? They train and they're consistent, but then once the marathon's over, they stop running because they never had a solid reason for why they started to run. They never had a strong why. So the importance you place on what you want to do is key. I would recommend that if you can't really come up with a strong why for that habit, I would recommend maybe just parking it on the side for just a little bit of time so you can really think. The worst thing you want to do is to jump into something and commit years and years and years and realize after a while that you never actually really wanted it, that you wanted it for the wrong reasons, and it doesn't give you the satisfaction that you thought it would. So really take some time out here to sift through and really think about that particular habit and how it's going to apply for you. I mean, is it important to you or not? Third key question you have to ask yourself about the habit is, do you have prompts or reminders to do the habit? We're going to talk about triggers. You remember triggers from the habit loop, or how habits, the science of how habits worked, I talked previously. But do you have reminders to prompt you to do the habit? So, for example, do you have, I don't know, an alarm on your phone that reminds you to call your friends? Maybe you're just trying to be more in touch with friends and family. Well, do you have something that prompts you, or do you have a previous habit that triggers the new habit you want to form? These are all concepts we're going to talk about. But keep this in mind here and really take some time to think about why you want to form this new habit. Why is it important to you? And how can you build in intrinsic reasons so that when it does get tough, when you just don't want to wake up, when you just don't want to talk to that person, or when you're just afraid to make a decision, you have a strong reason for why you want to do it. The reason why I write articles every week, the reason why I put out this workshop is because I have a bigger mission to impact society through creating change in individuals. I believe that if I can help you to become the best version of yourself, to become the best professional or performer or whatever it is, you're going to go on and create something great that's going to help make the world a better place. And by helping the world become a better place, each individual that you help is going to go on and help more people. And society is just going to be better off as a whole. It's a ripple effect. This is my why. This is why I do what I do, even when I don't feel like doing it. So think about what that would be for you. So now that we've covered the science, we've done the background checks and everything, we have the solid foundation. Let's dive into some practical strategies for real life. So number one, you want to make sure you start small. Now, when I mean small, we're talking small enough that it's actually difficult for you to say no. Again, this is a concept that I give credit to from BJ Fogg from Stanford University. And he talks about starting small in such a way that you actually just literally get started. This is a theme I'm going to keep repeating throughout this workshop, is this idea of getting started. It's not about how much you do as opposed to just getting started. That's it. It's about focusing on getting started over and over again, getting your 1% over and over again, and not worrying about the details, about being perfect or being, I need to do 30 minutes in the treadmill. Don't worry about that. Just focus on just getting started. Just get on the treadmill, and then we can worry about the rest afterwards. So whatever habit you have, think about how you can make it difficult to say no. So, for example, with myself, when I wanted to write a book to help students, because a lot of students that asked me for advice, and they wanted me to talk about kind of the psychology and of how to improve their grades. So I said, okay, I wanted to write a book. Well, what happened was I knew the book would be approximately 50,000 words. And because I was so focused on the outcome of writing 50,000 words, I was actually just paralyzed. I didn't even know how to start. I was scared. I wanted it to be perfect. I didn't want people to laugh at my work. I didn't want them to judge my work. I didn't want to make mistakes with the references and the science. So I basically just froze up for a couple of months. I would just open my laptop, look at the screen, not write anything, close my laptop, beat myself up, and so on and so forth. So that went on for a couple of months until I just said, you know what can I do in the next 2 minutes, or between, I think I said 5 minutes, 2 minutes or something. What can I do in the next 2 minutes what can I just do in the next 2 minutes? And I said, okay, I'm just going to write a sentence, right? So I wrote the sentence, and something strange happened. I actually got this weird boost of confidence and just relief, like, wow, I actually just got started. And once I broke that jinx of like just getting started, within the next hour, I just kept writing and writing and writing. And within a month, I'd finished the book, or at least the draft, the first 50,000. Because once you have that momentum going, it's like pushing a boulder down a hill. You just keep going and going and going. The most difficult thing is just getting started. It's easier to go to the gym once you get off the couch and just put on your gym kit. It's much easier to actually show up in the gym because you've just taken that first step. But it's harder if you're just sitting down there. So you can see this idea of the 2-minute rule. Well, it first came from David Allen's book, Getting Things Done. He talks about if something takes you less than 2 minutes, or 2 minutes or less, then you just get it done now, whether that's a phone call, a task, or something. The way I kind of think about it is to start off new habits using that rule. So again, if, say, for instance, you want to exercise more, well, what can you do in 2 minutes? Well, you can just put on your running shoes, right? That's it. Or in 2 minutes, you can walk out of your house. Just walk out the door and don't really think about anything else. Same thing for healthy eating as well. Just have an apple, right? So basically what we're doing here is psychologically, we're just training your mind to take its focus away from the big goal of the results to just what you can do now. And by focusing on just getting started, again, you get your 1% reps in, 1% over 1 year. You're 10 times better over two years. You can see how it accumulates over time, and the results just happen to come as a byproduct. Second strategy is to create hot triggers. So a lot of times what we do is we always try and prompt ourselves or remind ourselves to take action when we're actually not prepared to do so. So a good example of this is, you come back from work, you take off your clothes, you change to more very comfortable clothes, You sit down on the couch, you start watching your favorite movie or your TV show, you're super relaxed, and then you get a prompt or a reminder on your phone telling you, hey, let's go to the gym. And that's a cold trigger because you're just cold. You're not prepared to take action to that. That's the worst time to remind you to go to gym because you're relaxed. You're in a state of inertia, if I want to call it that. And that's the mistake we make. We always try and remind ourselves to do things or to take action when we just don't have the energy or we're just not in the state of mind to act on it. A hot trigger, on the other hand, is the opposite, where you remind yourself to do something when you actually are capable or willing to take action. Now, you see even shops and marketers, they use this all the time. So they always try, say if you're hungry, well, they always try to position themselves, or say with coffee shops, they always try and position themselves when they know you're going to match what they're offering. So let's say, around where you work, the office where you work, you'll see coffee shops because they know that on your way to work, you're probably tired. And because you're tired, you're going to want coffee. So the hot trigger of what they're presenting to you matches your state of mind, which is why you might find yourself in the habit of getting coffee every morning because they've strategically positioned themselves in your path on your journey on the way to work. So that's an example of a hot trigger. So think about how you can create hot triggers for the habits you want to form. Think about the parts of the day you have the most energy when you can match with the habit you want to form. So you can remind yourself to do things when it's just best suited for you to take action. So you can see here, hot trigger, you can act on it right now. Cold trigger, you cannot act on it right now. People capable and willing to act on a behavior. So I gave you the example, they're capable, the workers are capable because they can walk into the coffee shop. They're willing to act because they're tired. So they have that incentive. Plus they have the money to pay. And then they're prompted by the hot trigger, which is the coffee in the coffee shop. You see how that combination of factors makes it easier for them to take action. Number 3 strategy is piggyback off your current habits. So let me give you a quick example. So when 5-6 years ago, I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And at the time, it was just really frustrating because playing the guitar, if you've ever tried to learn, is possibly one of the hardest things you can do. First of all, your fingers hurt when you hold the strings down. I was using an acoustic. So your fingers actually have to develop calluses to get used to the strings being on your fingers. So that actually really hurts. Secondly, you suck in the beginning. Like your sound is off. And thirdly, it's actually can be quite easy initially, but then there's a steep learning curve because I was trying to learn jazz guitar, which is pretty intermediate to advanced style of playing guitar. So when I wanted to form this habit, what I did was that I already had a habit of coming home from work and I would just I would just open my laptop and I'll just watch comedy TV shows. And that was already a pre-existing habit I had. So instead of trying to build this habit from scratch, maybe trying to build a habit of playing the guitar at another random time, what I did was I just simply built it on top of the momentum I already had of watching the TV comedy shows. So what I would do is once the comedy show would come on, I would bring out my guitar and I would just start to fiddle around with it and just play while that was going on. That's an example of piggybacking off your current habits, or what I call just riding the wave, right? There's no point riding against the wave or just riding where there's no wave. Why not just ride where there is a wave? So you can think about current habits you have. So you see this workshop exercise, you can pause here and write this down. I think I'll also probably have slides in the resources section below you can also use. So what I want you to do is basically write 2 lists. You can, what are the current habits you have? So think about things you already do on a daily basis. Okay, you take a shower, you brush your teeth, you pray, you put on your clothes, you drink coffee, you drive to work, you eat lunch. These are habits that you're conscious of. So just put those down. Then think about things that just happen to you. So remember the habit loop. Think about things that trigger you. So I don't know, maybe on your way to work, you have the traffic light turns red, or you got that alarm clock that rings in the morning, or maybe it's just an internal trigger. It's a feeling. So you're talking about you feel hungry, you feel stressed, you feel bored. These are things that happen to you. So the idea here is we want to kind of play around with these different these 2 columns and think about that habit you want to build and see how you can basically stack it on top. So maybe you say, after I eat lunch, I am going to call my friend. Maybe you want to have the habit, you want to, start networking, or you want to get in the habit of reaching out to friends or family. Well, you can say, after I eat lunch, I'm going to send an email out to network with someone, right? But you already have that habit of eating during lunch, so you just follow up with the habit you actually want to build. So when you're thinking about things that happen to you, you want to think about triggers. These are the different types of triggers that this will help you think about what a trigger is. And we're going to come back to this concept later on. But this is really important because the trigger really is the root cause of a habit. So if you can deal with the habit from the trigger, which is the root cause, then you basically have the answer to building or destroying a habit or breaking a bad habit. So first you want to think location. Where am I? So where are you? Where like a trigger, you can be triggered by where you are. So, people who are trying to stop consuming alcohol, can be aware of the fact that if they walk into an environment that is kind of with the layout that most bars have, relaxing music, dim lights, that location is going to trigger a certain behavior. Another type of trigger you can think about, which you can also piggyback, use to piggyback your new habit, is time. What time is it? Maybe there's certain times of the day you feel a certain kind of way. Maybe you feel energetic at 11 a.m. Well, then you can build your new habit on top of that. Emotional state. Again, how do you feel at that point in time? Other people, who else is around you? The people around you also can serve as a trigger for you to act in a certain way. If you have people around you, then you can use that to piggyback to a new habit as well. And preceding event, what just happened to set off your craving? It could be you just scanned, you photocopied, you're working, you're doing something that's just really boring, and that preceding event, maybe someone shouted at you and you got frustrated because they shouted at you, and then out of that frustration you just went and binged eat on some food. Just being aware of the triggers is really, really important. So this is the exercise. You want to pick a habit you want to start. So let's say you want to start the habit of drinking 1 glass of water every day. What you want to say is, after or before the current habit, which you would have selected from the previous exercise, let's say you say after or before I eat dinner, I will, new habit, drink a glass of water. So again, take some time here to fill this sentence out and just make sure you take this plan with you moving forward. So the fourth strategy here is to state when and where you will do this new behavior. Now, this idea here seems very simple, but there's been countless and hundreds of research studies to show how powerful this is. So, basically, in one of the research studies on this, the researchers basically got 200, I think about 248 subjects, and they wanted to test their frequency of exercise over a period of 2 weeks. There were three groups in the study. There was a control group, so that was the first group. They were just simply told, hey, keep track of your exercise routine. The second group was called the motivation group. Now, this group, the difference was they were also told to keep track, but the difference was they were told, they were shown a presentation about just to motivate them about exercise, the benefits of exercise, and so on and so forth. So it was kind of like a motivational speech to prep them before they exercise. The third group, however, was an intention group where this strategy of implementation intention was applied to. This group was told to track their workouts, but there was a difference. They were told beforehand to complete a sentence, and you can see that sentence on the screen right now. They were told to complete the following sentence. During the next week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on brackets day, at time of day, at in place. So that was the difference between the three different groups. Now, this is what happened. The participants who exercised at least once a day, the control group who only tracked their progress, only 38% of them basically exercise at least once a day. Only 35% of the people who were given a motivational speech exercise once a day. 91% of the intention group that used the strategy I showed you before showed up to exercise at least once a week. So, what can you see from this? Well, I see more than double the odds of you following up on a certain action by simply being intentional about where, when, and what you will be doing. This was published in the British Journal of Health Psychology as well. So, the idea here is that you want to schedule your behavior ahead of time. A lot of times we rely too much on motivation and willpower and how we feel before we act on a certain plan we want, and we wonder why we're not consistent. Well, it's hard to stay consistent if you haven't taken the decisions ahead of time. It takes a lot of energy to make decisions. So if you've made the decisions ahead of time about where you'll be, when you will show up, and what you will be doing, it just takes that off your hands. For example, with me personally, I'm currently on a strength training program called 5x5 Strong Lifts. And with my strength training program, I know exactly what I'm going to be working out on, what my workouts would be, because I work out typically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I've been consistent with that for the past 5 years. So I know what I'm going to be working on, what the number of reps, the number of sets, the exercises. I know where I will be, and I know what time I'm going to show up at the gym. Because I've made these decisions ahead of time, all I need to do is just wake up, get about my day, and just show up. So think about how you can basically schedule your behavior ahead of time and use that strategy I just showed you earlier. So just to go back, think about the day, the time of the day, and the place. Have that plan ready ahead of time. So the fifth strategy I want to talk about is, actually, let me just go back here. There's actually been additional studies show about this. I told there's hundreds of studies about implementation intentions, but there's actually been more studies. There's been studies showing how people on diets are more likely to stick to healthy eating if they know when and how they'll eat healthy as well. I think there's also, they say, additional studies on people taking vitamins as well, staying consistent. So just wanted to reiterate that point. This is really important step, actually. If you wanted to pick any of these strategies, this is definitely the one to pick. Fifth strategy is stay motivated by using stakes. Let me just tell a quick story about a young lady. Her name is Dorothy Hamill. And in about the 1970s, she was about 18 years old, 19. She was a teenager, and she was training for the Olympics in ice skating. So Dorothy would wake up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, and she would go back to school. So she'd wake up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning. She would go for training. After training in the morning, she would go to school like any other young teenage girl would. Now, after school, she would go back home. She would eat her dinner and then go back to training for another 2 hours. So her typical training schedule was about 4 hours, and it included 2 hours of what they call free skating. So she did a lot of very intricate skating that requires a lot of attention and focus and energy. And so imagine doing this for years and years and years. You miss out on the normal things a normal teenage girl would enjoy, right? Like, whether it's dating guys or whether it's just spending time with her friends or just having a normal life. She sacrificed everything for her skating dreams. Well, her hard work finally paid off, because in 1976, during the Winter Olympics in Austria, she won the gold medal for ladies single figure skating. And when she was asked basically afterwards, okay, what was it that drove you to stay so motivated and consistent to wake up so early for so many years? This is what she said. I had a commitment to myself and to all the people who were helping me skate. It's like a marriage. You don't walk away from it. It was a huge investment in everyone's life. My mom, my brothers, my sisters, and coaches. As a matter of fact, Dorothy's mother had moved the entire family to a different city just to make sure that she was closer to where she could train. So a lot of sacrifices were made to ensure that she had the opportunity to basically succeed as an athlete. The reason why you can see from what Dorothy said that she was able to stay motivated was because she was very aware of the negative consequences of not taking action. There were stakes. A stake essentially is basically the consequences for not taking action. Basically, these consequences could be anything from losing a particular reward to any sort of painful repercussions for not taking action. Now, in simple lingo, a good example of a stake is your job, right? So let's say you have a job. You might not like your boss. You might not like the work. You might not like the journey. You might not like the working hours. But guess what? 5 days or more every week, you show up at a certain time, you clock in, you clock out, you repeat the process for years and decades, and you show up consistently. You wake up at a certain time every day. Why? Because of what's at stake. And what's at stake is the negative consequences of not showing up to work, which is losing your financial security, which you need to provide for your family, for your lifestyle, for other things you're funding in your life. So it's not so much the fact that you like your job, but it's what's at stake. What's at stake is more painful to you than the act of showing up to work. And that's the key with stakes. You want to make sure that it's more painful not to take action than it is to take action. It's more painful not to wake up at 5 a.m. than it is to wake up at 5 a.m. So Dorothy was aware of the stakes on the sacrifices people around her and so many other things. So you can think about stakes for yourself that you can use. For example, a good one people typically do is having a friend who can keep you accountable to show up at the gym, and every time you don't show up, you can pay them a certain amount of money as a consequence. Or you can also, if you're someone who is very big on integrity, very big on keeping with your promises, if breaking a promise to you is a very painful thing to do, well, if there's a habit you want to be consistent with, then you can just publicly announce it. Tell people, this is what I'm going to do every week. For example, with me, every Monday and Thursday, I publish an article on my website. Well, that's a public commitment. Well, you can make a public commitment with whatever it is you're trying to do. And for you, there's a painful consequence of simply not keeping the promise, because you're someone who is very big on integrity. So that these are examples of how you can create stakes to help you stay consistent. All right, so let's move on to the next section and talk about how can we build habits that last. Basically, how do you build habits to stick over the long term? We've talked about different strategies to just get started, to create a new habit. But now let's talk about how can you actually create habits that will last for life. Habits that don't just break off after a couple of months. This is kind of what we just did right now was we just kind of put in the screw in the hole. Now we're just going to use the screwdriver and we're just going to tighten it up to make sure that you actually stick to your goals over the long term. So firstly, let me just talk to you about research done by a man called Dan Buettner. Now, Dan Buettner, he's a longevity expert. Basically, he's an expert in human life expectancy. He's also a National Geographic fellow. And basically, the National Geographic Society funded him and a research team of scientific experts to explore the world. I think it took them a couple of decades, but they went traveling around the world to find the parts of the world that basically had what we call blue zones. These are parts of the world with the healthiest and happiest people on earth. We're talking people who typically last and live up to 100 years on average. They have the lowest incidences of obesity, cancer, heart disease. These are people who, in figurative terms, if I could use, they literally forget to die. They are that healthy. So there were 5 regions they discovered around the world that were blue zones. There was Icaria in Greece, Okinawa in Japan. The 3rd place was Sardinia in Italy. The 4th place was Loma Linda in California. And the 5th place they discovered was Nicoya in Costa Rica. Now, here's where some of the results. So we can see here one of the research studies published in PubMed, the mortality rate in deaths per 100,000 people. Well, look at the difference, especially coronary heart disease for males, between Okinawa in Japan and the United States. On average, the average Okinawan lives 7 years more than the average American. And they have a 1/5 of the rate of cancer and cardio disease. So just looking at this, you can see how different these blue zone people live. Now, you would think it's probably how they eat. It's probably how it's probably something to do with their diet, right? Because after all, the Western diet is more processed foods, KFC, McDonald's, all that kind of stuff. Well, here's what they found. Their immediate environment is perfectly designed to make healthy decisions effortless. In other words, their environment. So when I say environment, I'm talking items, I'm talking architecture, colors, sounds, anything in your immediate physical environment actually has an influence on your behavior. As a matter of fact, it makes it easier or harder to take certain actions. So let me give you some examples. Let's talk about terrain. So this is a picture of Sardinia in Italy, one of the blue zones, right? And what's interesting about Sardinia, Italy is that a couple of things. First of all, they don't have easily accessible ports for ships, so it's difficult to get processed foods delivered or transported to Sardinia. That's the first thing. So they don't have to deal with going to a grocery store and having to check, is this processed? Does this have preservatives? Because they don't even get delivered processed foods to start off with. And they don't have, because I guess it might not be profitable, they're not going to have all these chains, these food chains that we, constantly associate with delivering unhealthy foods. Well, those chains, they're not going to set up in a mountainous region like this because it's just not viable, profitably viable for them. So, because of this, the Sardinians and a lot of these blue zone regions, they actually have to grow their own food. They actually have to garden. They actually have to make their own food. And as a result of that, naturally, you're just going to have a healthier diet because it's homegrown, it's organic, and obviously it takes exercise to garden and make your own food. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a lot of these regions are mountainous. So there's a lot of mountains, there's a lot of rocks. So imagine trying to get from where you are to your friend's house. You want to visit your friend or you want to go to buy some food. Anything you have to do, it's a workout in itself. As a matter of fact, Dan actually discovered that a lot of these people didn't even practice what we call exercise or going to the gym. There was no set period of time where they went to the gym to lift weights, or exercise was a lifestyle. It was something they did every day just as a part of their daily routine. There was no set time to go for a run. Just simply walking around every day was a workout in itself. So that's an example of, again, how the terrain by default makes healthy decision making basically automatic. They don't have to think about exercise because if I want to get from point A to point B, it is exercise to get there because of the hills and so on and so forth. Third thing also, again, a lot of research has shown how well connected you are socially, or in other words, isolation can actually reduce your life expectancy. So the more isolated you are, the less connected you feel to society, the more likely you have lower life expectancy. Well, what's interesting about these blue zones is that because of the structure of the buildings, the architecture, the mountains and whatnot, most people are within a short distance between each other, essentially. So what that means is that basically makes them a close-knit community where everyone knows each other. A lot of times in these societies, older people are actually respected for their age, their wisdom, and obviously that would make them happier and make them, help them to live longer because it's a close-knit society. Whereas if you think about those of us who live in the West, well, we can have, where we can live in so many different parts. We feel disconnected because we stay indoors a lot. We don't really interact with people. A lot of our interactions are electronic or not in person, versus those people. And to be honest, we don't really appreciate elderly people or old people as much as we should. So that's about terrain. Another thing to take into account is the architecture. We just even talked about terrain. We're talking mountains, trees. Now let's talk about actual buildings. Well, give you an example, say the Okinawans, for instance. A lot of their rooms don't have chairs. So what happens is they end up sitting on the floor most of the time. And they can get up, stand up, and sit down for as many as 60 times a day. Well, what do we typically do? We have programs in work offices and stuff saying, sitting down for more than an hour is bad for you. So the physio would say, every 30 minutes you stand up and stretch and do all these things. Well, that's all great. But guess what? The Okinawans don't even have to think about that, because when you sit down on the floor after a couple of minutes, it's so uncomfortable you have to stand up, right? Another example, in Sardinia, for instance, a lot of the houses are vertical. So for a lot of us, we have everything, we can just go up and down, or it's convenient. Everything is within convenience reach. Well, with Sardinians, they actually have to, say if I want to go to my room, I have to go up maybe like 3-4 flights of stairs to get to my room. Versus typical Western home where you have all the couches facing the television, where it's specifically designed for you to be unproductive, right? The chairs are specifically facing the TV. So these are examples of terrain and architecture, how that affects behavior without even thinking. And that's a huge thing I want to keep pushing here, is long-term change is really about designing your environment so that good decision-making is easy and effortless, really. That is what it's about. If you can design your environment so that good decision-making is easy, then you're more likely to stick to it for the rest of your life, really. Let's talk about physical items as well. So in Okinawa, basically, they use really, really small plates. Now, compared to the plates that we use, it's much, much smaller. Now, there's been a lot of research, and I'll talk about this in the upcoming sections, that show that the size of your plate actually affects the portion that you put on the plate, which affects the amount of calories you consume, which affects how much weight you lose or how healthy you are. You see where I'm going with that. So there's a science showing that just using smaller plates can help you lose weight. You don't even have to consciously think about it, because subconsciously your mind thinks small plate, small portion, and as a result of that small portion, you're going to consume less calories. Also take into account, these people don't have access to things like Wi-Fi, electronic devices, all the things we complain about that distract us, like apps and iPhone, and they don't have those things. So they don't have to think about how to avoid distractions, because there is nothing to avoid being distracted by, if that makes sense. The last thing they also observed about these people is that social environment. Once a week, they shut off for 24 hours and they all attend their faith institutions, whether it's their church or whatever, and there's no work, and they use that opportunity, being in a community within that church, to as a way to de-stress, essentially, from a long week. And that again contributes to their health and their happiness over the long run. So motivation is not enough. This is something this is something I strongly believe. Anyone I'm sure if you're listening, if you've ever achieved anything over a long period of time, you know this is true. You know that there's certain times where you didn't feel motivated, but you still had to show up. You know that motivation is only useful in the beginning, or just to kind of give you that edge to get started. But over the long term, to stay consistent, motivation isn't enough. If you really want long-term change, well, you need to think about how to design your environment, again, to make good decision-making easier. So Here are examples of how environment shapes your life. So there's been Framingham studies that have shown that if your 3 best friends are obese, there's up to a 57% chance you will also be obese too. So think about the people you surround yourself with. What habits do they have? What kind of outlook on life do they have? And if your 3 closest friends are not what you want to become, you need to think about how to put boundaries in that relationship where they don't have this kind of effect on you. 57% is a pretty big odds that you want to avoid. Second thing, again, going back to when I talked about the Okinawa's plates, research by Brian Wansink, and his book Mindless Eating, I'm going to put that link in the resources, shows that reducing the size of your plate from 12.5 inches to 10 inches could actually lead the average person serving themselves nearly 30% less food on the same plate. How many times do you hear dietitians talk about, this is what you should eat, this is what you shouldn't eat? There's so much focus on what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat. There's not as much focus on the environment that the food is positioned in. Let me give you an example. If you want to make a habit of eating apples, right? You want to eat an apple a day because you want to keep the doctor away. Okay, so it seems like I'm rhyming right now. But on a serious note, most of us buy the apple and we just put it in a compartment drawer in our fridge. Well, what you've done there essentially is you've taken the apple away from your eyesight. It's actually possible that those apples could expire in your fridge because you've kept it away from your visual sight. What you could do is design your environment to make eating apples easier. Okay, so you you come into your kitchen every morning, every night. Why not just have a bowl in the center of your kitchen table with 5 apples, or a bowl in front of your TV in between you and the couch? Well, what you've done there is you put a visual cue that makes it easy for you to just, hey, feeling a bit hungry, there's an apple in front of me, I'm just going to grab that. As opposed to the opposite, which we mostly do, is our kitchen table is full of other crap, like, chocolate biscuits or something else that we are trying to avoid, but it's there. And that is what causes the problem. We've got other examples I can give you. If you've been struggling to go to the gym consistently, well, what you can do is pack all your gym clothes the night before, put it in a bag, and literally put it at the entrance of your door. Now, when you wake up, you shower, and you're about to walk out of the door, well, you got an obstruction in your way. It's your gym clothes, so naturally, it's easier to just, okay, fine. Pick up the gym clothes, open the door, and walk out. And now, on your way back home from work, you're going to be more likely to make that decision to go to the gym. The same thing applies for reading books. If you want to make a habit of reading a book consistently, well, what do we typically do? We buy a book and we put it in some sort of shelf, or we put it in a cupboard where we can't see. Well, rather than do that, why not just hold that book? Say you've got a long commute and you're not driving, you're using a train to work. Why not just hold the book? No one said anything about reading 10 pages, 20 pages, 30 pages. Just hold the book. And when you go into when you go about your day, what you're going to notice is, just because that book is physically visual, because you can see it and it's in your hand and it's convenient, you would just naturally just read because it's next to you. The same thing applies. You could just put the book on your bed. So when you go to sleep, well, the book is already on your bed. You might as well just read it, right? Likewise, if you want to, get better sleep, think about how to design your environment to make it easier for you to sleep. Well, think about environments where you usually feel really relaxed. Like if you go to any sort of place where they do massages, or a spa, you notice they always create this environment that makes you super relaxed and you just want to sleep and relax, right? Well, you can design your room to look like that or to feel like that. Dim lights, candles, scents, no TV, no electronics in your room. Literally, you can design your room so that it's super relaxing and it makes it easier to fall asleep. Another thing, people always talk about stress, how stressed they are, how they just feel really stressed, basically stressed, anxiety. Well, there's a correlation between your how tidy your environment is. So if you got unwashed dishes in your sink, if your clothes are all over the place, if your working desk has papers all over the place, you're going to actually be more stressed because your environment is also stressful. But if you can tidy up, clean your sink, clean your house, clean yourself, clean your work desk, you're going to find that you're going to be relieved. You're going to have this sigh of relief. You're going to feel de-stressed. Okay, I can give another final example of two other examples of environmental design. Talk about productivity, for instance. I myself personally, I find I'm 5 to 10 times more productive if I listen to music while I'm working. Some people are better off not even having people around them when they're working. They're 10 times more productive if they're working in a room where there's nobody around them, where it's just pure silence. Again, designing your environment can actually significantly improve your productivity. If you're a leader of a team, what do we typically do during meetings? We sit them down where basically sometimes they might not necessarily be facing each other. Maybe we've got a meeting or we've got any sort of team dynamic talks or something. Well, the best way to get people in a team to interact with each other is to actually design a circle or a semicircle or just something where the seats are in a semicircle so they can interact with each other. But typically when we want people to interact with each other, we just have rows of seats which are horizontal. So these are different. This right here is really the key to shaping behavior over the long term. It's understanding your environment and basically how you can design that environment to get the results you want. Marketers know this very well. If you go into any grocery store, most of them place the items on your eye level that they want you to purchase more. Okay? This is a strategy they use because guess what? Again, because it's within your visual line, your visual cue, you're more likely to act on it. Social media apps do the exact same thing. They know that you're more likely to make a decision if there's a visual cue in front of you and it takes very little steps to make a decision. So what social media apps do is they reduce the number of steps for you to get that dopamine rush from, likes and pictures. So what they do is they just make it very easy for you to just scroll through a bunch of pictures or watch streams of videos over and over and over, or countless videos, basically to keep you engaged on their platform. So they're using the strategies on you. Well, you might as well use these strategies for your own benefit as well. So here's a quote by Tony Robbins: "Effective leaders have the ability to consistently move themselves and others to action because they understand the invisible forces that shape us." And environment is if not the invisible force that shapes us. It is the force that really determines what your life would look like. And so there's 2 steps that we want to do, and there'll be a workshop exercise in the next section. Step 1, we want to increase the number of steps required to make a bad decision. So here's a good example. If you've got some sort of food that you're trying to avoid, chocolate cookies, Oreos, or it could just be a certain food you're just trying to avoid. Well, what you could do, rather than keep it in a drawer, a cupboard that is within reach, arm's reach, well, why not put it in a cupboard, on top of a cupboard, or somewhere where you would actually need to get a ladder to climb up and get it, right? What you've done there essentially is you've increased the number of steps to get that unhealthy food. Okay? You can't buy a Ben & Jerry's ice cream, put it in the fridge, and expect that you're not going to devour the ice cream, because it's there, it's within reach, it's in your house. Well, if you can put these items above reach and make it difficult, basically increase the number of steps, then it's easier to make the better decision, which moves to step 2, reduce the number of steps required to make a good decision. I gave the example of a bowl of apples in the middle of your table. I gave the other examples with holding a book in your hand everywhere you go. Naturally, you're just going to read because of that. So here's the workshop exercise. I want you to write 2 lists. One list to make the good decisions easier. The other list on how you can make bad decisions harder. So obviously they're going to have to be related to the habits you want to form. So you can see the examples on the left. Using smaller plates to eat, cleaning your room when you're stressed, use music. Bad decisions on the right. You can see how we can increase the steps, log off all your social media accounts after you use them. So next time you want to get distracted, you can't just pop up that app and it's just instant. Now you actually have to log on, and it's like, it's a delay. If you've got struggle financially, like your financial spending habits, and you've got these new cards, they're contactless cards. Basically what they are is you literally don't even have to insert the card into the paying process machine in the shops anymore. You can just literally just scan the card over. Well, that is an environmental shift that makes financial spending decisions worse. So what you could do is maybe try a mix of paying with your card and paying with cash, because when you got cash, you've got more time to make a decision for what you want to pay, because you can actually see visually the quantity that you are handing over to someone else to pay for something. And you might make that decision and say, you know what, it's not worth spending this money on this jacket or this shoe or something. Okay, let's talk about the second most important factor for long-term success, long-term consistency, and it's mindset. So let me share a quick story about a man called Bill Wilson. Now, Bill Wilson was a man in the United States, and he was an alcoholic addict. He struggled with drinking problems. He had made promises to his family, his friends, that he would stop, but he just could not stop. He tried everything, and he'd been to hospital. He tried so many things, and he could not stop drinking. In 1934, he just stumbled into a town's hospital in Manhattan, and he got sat down by a physician who basically sedated him with some drugs. And a couple of hours later on, Bill basically shouted this. He said, "If there is a God, let him show himself. I am ready to do anything." Bill would later note in his recordings afterwards, he said that the room basically lit and it was white, and he basically had a spiritual encounter with God, which he described basically helped him to break free of his alcoholic addiction. for the next 36 years of his life, Bill would never have a drink of alcohol again. As a matter of fact, he went on to found what is called the Alcoholics Anonymous group, which helps about 2 million people every year. They've got 150 centers across the world. They've helped about over 10 million Americans to date, and they're famous for their 12 steps program as well. So that is basically the story of Bill Wilson, and why and that brings us to this whole topic about mindset. So basically, I have look at this quote here by Gandhi. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. Well, let me share just another quick story about a friend, one of my friends. Now, she was trying to stay consistent with the gym. She felt she was slightly overweight. She wanted to get into a certain shape, but she would always make excuses. She would, like everyone else, 1st of January, enthusiastic, pay personal trainers, get the supplements, get the clothes. By March, already making excuses, not going to the gym frequently, and by July, she's just off it completely, back to her old ways, overeating and whatnot. And she would come to me for help, to help her design workout programs, to help her stay consistent. And one day I just said to her, I said, look, this has been going on for years. Like every year, it's the same issue. You just get started and you just never stay consistent. And I said, what is your problem with the gym exactly? And then she started to say some words, some sentences that I just found really interesting. She would say things like, well, people in the gym will judge me. They're very judgmental. They just compare, bodies, like the way I look and the way they look. And because I'm not in the shape they look, then they're going to judge me. I'm too busy to go to the gym. Working out is boring. And she would say things like this, and something clicked, and I was like, wait, hold on a second. Here she is. She has these beliefs. Myself, on the other hand, I think actually people at the gym can actually be some of the coolest people, some of the most motivated, inspiring people. You can actually meet a lot of great people in the gym, actually. I always find time to go to the gym, and I think it can be really interesting if you find a way to, have variety in your workouts. Going to the gym can actually be a lot of fun. And I realized that she had actually built a belief system that made going to the gym scary, difficult, and boring. And this was when I discovered something. Your actions will never exceed your self-image. You will never, over the long term, outdo your self-image. It's almost like your self-image and your actions need to be in line with each other for you to actually stay consistent. Because otherwise, it's like a rubber band. You pull the rubber band and you let go, it's just going to come back. This right here is the reason why people struggle to stay consistent with anything. It's because deep down inside, subconsciously, you actually don't believe you're that person. You actually don't believe, your beliefs basically don't align with the actions or the goals you want to achieve. Right? So you hear people say all the time how, I gave you the example weight loss, but we can think of another example. You hear people talk about, how they want to, write consistently, right? Or they want to build a certain business that makes a certain amount of money or whatnot, but subconsciously they have beliefs holding them back from doing so. They have beliefs about themselves. They have beliefs about their ability. They have beliefs about the thing itself. They might believe that writing a book is only something you can do when you're 50 and you're established and you've got a reputation and you've got money. They might believe starting a business, a successful business, is something you can only do if you've got funding by some big venture capital firm or something. These beliefs basically make it difficult to take action. And because that self-image doesn't match, over the long term, you're just going to keep falling back to your old behaviors over and over again. The solution to this is just be it, right? So simply be the type of person who does the actions as if you had already achieved the goal. Give you an example. So let's say you wanted to lose 10 pounds and gain 5 pounds of muscle or something, right? Rather than what we typically do is we focus on the outcome, right? We focus on the 10 pounds and the 5 pounds of muscle we want to gain. We just obsess, dream. You know, all these motivational speakers tell us, oh, just dream, want it so badly, blah, blah, blah. So what we do is we just obsess about it. But that puts so much pressure on the performance and we don't enjoy the process. Well, here's the solution to that. And to changing your self-image, why not just focus on, first of all, discovering what that type of person, so the person who already has the results you want, describe that person. Like, think about what kind of person that is. Are they someone who makes excuses when they have to show up in the gym? No. Are they someone who judges people in the gym or judges people who are better than them or in better physique than them, or people who are in less physique than them? No. Are they, what are their habits? You know, do they prep their meals on Sunday for the week? Do they surround themselves with other fitness guys once a week and talk about things? Do they work out 3 times a week for 10 minutes each time? Do they, really break it down to the point where it's not a mystery anymore as to why they have the results they have. Then you want to reverse engineer and simply just reenact and do those things that person would do, right? Because if you can do what that person does on a consistent basis and get your 1% improvements every day, then guess what? Eventually, you are going to have a similar outcome. And so here again is that whole issue of focusing on goals as a performance and the outcome, which we're taught to do. We're always told, write down what you want to achieve, quantify it, so on and so forth. Yeah, that's great, except for the fact that you can't even control the outcome, right? But what you can do is control your actions. What you can do is just be the type of person who has those results just as a byproduct. So I'm kind of introducing this new concept to you where I want you to take your eyes away from the outcome. I know it might be difficult, but just forget about the outcome for a second and just focus on developing the habits. Focus on being that type of person. So if you find out there's someone who's in the shape you want to be, wakes up at 6 a.m., they work out in the morning before they have breakfast. Then they record and they journal their progress. You find out that they eat certain meals or certain times in the day or whatever. Then just focus on building those habits. And once you build those habits, the results will come. So that is what we're saying here. So here's the exercise I want you to do. Think about the goal you want to achieve and think about the person that already has achieved that goal and think about that person. What do they think about? What are their habits? What do they do every day? How do they interact with the world? Now, write a list. Step 2, write a list of your new self-identity to match this person. Really what you're doing is thinking about your future self, okay? So you can start the sentence with, I am the type of person who. So I am the type of person. So you want to become a successful entrepreneur, you find out that successful entrepreneurs typically, give a lot of money out every month. Okay, so you can say, I'm the type of person who donates X amount of money every month. I'm the type of person who never skips a workout. I'm the type of person who wakes up at 5 a.m. Yeah. So now that you've specified who you are now, you actually have to follow up. And you have to build up that belief in yourself, right? You actually have to take actions to prove to yourself that you are this new person. And this is what I call small wins. Too many times we focus on that one major breakthrough that will give us all the confidence and all the success we're looking for. Why not instead just focus on small wins? These are small things you can do on a daily basis to prove to yourself that you are this guy. I used to be afraid of public speaking before. As a matter of fact, in public spaces, I used to be even afraid to just ask a question, to raise my hand up in a classroom and ask a question. I was that self-conscious. But I also had a goal of being able to public speak because I have ideas I want to share with the world and I want to be able to help people. So there was this conflict between my subconscious beliefs and my goals. So using the strategies I'm talking about, I just started to build up with small wins. First of all, I started to tell myself that I am comfortable public speaking, that I am the type of person who's not afraid to stand up in a crowd and voice their opinion. Then, every opportunity I had, I would practice using small wins. So if there was a large seminar and they said, does anyone have questions? I would be the first to raise my hand, stand up and speak in front of the entire crowd. If there was any opportunity to speak in public, I would take that opportunity and build up that confidence slowly. Get my 1% small wins every single opportunity I had until the confidence followed up as a byproduct, because I was simply being the type of person who was comfortable public speaking. I was acting as if. So you're not pretending, you're not faking it till you're making it. You're just being it because, like the bamboo seed, you are still the tree. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before you do become the tree. So that's the first thing. The second way to develop this belief in yourself is by reducing exposure to negative people. Remember, we spoke about environment design and how that affects your behavior. Well, again, research done by psychologist Elaine Hatfield, she has found that we have a tendency to mimic the body language, the feelings, and the displays of people, especially negative people around us. So, in other words, if you want me to put this in context for you, if you're around negative people, they are literally affecting your body language. So you might unconsciously be moving your hands and looking and blinking and talking in a way that is negative, not because you are a negative person, but because you've actually been spending too much time around negative people. And you can see that quote by Les Brown: don't waste another minute dealing with a toxic, negative, energy draining person. Some people are wired for negativity. They love being argumentative, combative, and abusive. Run for your life as quickly as possible. So, if you have negative people in your life, I'm not saying you should cut them off completely. I'm just saying reduce your exposure to them. Put boundaries in the relationship so that they cannot infect you, and you, with your positivity, can affect them so they become positive people. Now, and negative people is not just restricted to physical. We're talking about negative information in general. Spending too much time on the news about the bad things that are happening around the world, or spending too much time reading or listening to just negative stuff. What you expose yourself to directly influences your self-image and how you believe in yourself. The third thing is, there's actually been research studies to show that how you even speak to yourself. The self-talk you use for yourself also affects your self-image. So there was a research done by this doctor. I can't remember what his name is, but basically he would have weight loss patients come to meet him. And a lot of times they would come and say, when he would get them to describe their bodies, they would use negative words like, my body's flabby, I don't like this part of my stomach, and they'll just, basically judging themselves critically. So he would train them to use more neutral language, like just to describe, my stomach is flat, my stomach is round, just language that is neutral. And over time, he found that these patients actually were more consistent with their exercise, and they went on to lose more weight than otherwise. So the language you use and how you talk to yourself also affects how much belief you have in yourself to be able to conquer the self-doubts that you have towards accomplishing anything. So it's all about the long-term perspective here, right? You're not going to change your self-image overnight, but you can begin to act as if right now. And again, it's about small wins and those 1% improvements and that 10x improvement over the year. Which brings me to keystone habits. Now, there's many ways to skin a cat, right? Really, I'm only interested in sharing with you, and that's what the point of this whole workshop is, the most efficient and effective ways to get things done, right? Why not approach things by getting the most bang for buck for the least amount of effort? That's why I want to make things easier for you. Now, one of the ways to make this whole process of change easier is by using what we call keystone habits. Again, this was introduced in Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit. But essentially, a keystone habit you can kind of think of is a habit that makes it easier to take action and positive behaviors. It essentially pulls together every area of your life. So kind of think of a domino effect. You have this one habit that if you can focus on developing that one habit, every area of your life just seems to come together, right? So let me give you a couple of examples. There's been research published in the British Journal of Health Psychology showing that people who exercise consistently, we're talking 3 times a week or more, are less likely to smoke, they're more likely to eat healthy, and they're more likely to have better sleep. So you can see how just by focusing on consistency with exercise, you can literally prevent yourself from bad habits and build good habits without really trying too much. When we're talking about keystone habits, we also have to think about priorities. Remember at the beginning, we talked about one of the problems we're trying to solve is this issue of how do I know which habits to focus on? How do I know what to prioritize? Well, your keystone is what you want to prioritize. So again, another example is sleep. Research from the Harvard Medical School has shown that people who have, 6 or more hours of sleep are more likely to have better memory retention and better ability to, better memory and better ability to retain information. So again, if you're reading a lot of stuff and you want to be able to retain information, you want to have better memory, well, your keystone there is your sleep. Another example is journaling. There's been work by Dr. Pennebaker showing the correlation between therapeutic writing, which is journaling, and stress relief. So if you're feeling really stressed, then you can use journaling, and just expressing yourself in writing, expressing your feelings in writing can really help you to de-stress. And by de-stressing through journaling, you can find yourself, being happier, being able to network better because you're in a better mood. So many other habits come together because of one keystone habit. As a matter of fact, going back to the journaling case, well, if your usual response to stress is to binge eat or to complain or to take it out on someone, you have a bad habit that you usually triggered off by stress, well, journaling could be a good substitute for that. So we're going to talk about bad habits in a second. But this is just to show you keystone habits and that role they have. Now, what I want you to think about real quick is, what are your keystone habits? So what are the keystone habits in your life that kind of pull your life together right now? So for example, with me, if I don't exercise 3 times a week, I'm going to be sluggish. As a matter of fact, actually, there's I would say I have 3 keystone habits, actually. So I'm a Christian. So for me, it's praying, reading the Bible every day, plus exercise. I would say those 3 things are my keystone habits. And I know that if I can just stay consistent with those 3, the rest of my life will be okay. Everything seems to take care of itself. I'm more confident. I'm happier. I'm more productive. I'm more social. Everything just seems to come into place because I know my keystone habits, and I'm just efficient. I focus on what matters, right? This is the idea again, from the, you want to, from the book, this book called The One Thing. Again, I'll link in the resources, about priorities. How do you prioritize what's important? Well, this is your priority. Your keystone is your priority. So you can think of what your keystone habits are. And if you don't have one, think about how you can develop one that makes everything easier. So let's move on to the next section. The third factor that affects your long-term ability to stick to your goals is accountability. It's about using feedback to encourage behavior. So when we mean accountability, I'm not just talking about having friends you call when you relapse or that kind of stuff. We're talking about actual systems in place that remind you of your progress. So one of the issues we have when we have a goal, say for instance, you have the goal, again, you want that goal. You want the goal of, I don't know, you want to be a published author that is well known across the world. Or again, with the exercise example, your goal is that you want to lose 20 pounds in the next 6 months, 1 year. Well, the biggest problem we have is this issue, which we'll talk about later in a second, but it's something that scientists talk about a lot. It's called time inconsistency, where there's a challenge because there's you now and there's you in the future. There's almost like 2 of you, right? So here you are, you're trying to make decisions in the best interest of your future self. The only problem is your current self only cares about instant gratification. So you have this challenge, this tug, this battle between the instant gratification to feed your current self versus delaying gratification for the sake of your future self. And the problem is, a lot of times when we have goals or we have habits that we want to build, we typically, the gratification for your future self is delayed, right? So it might take 6 months before you see results from your exercise or your healthy eating or your writing or your business. And so that delay makes it difficult to resist temptation for instant gratification now, from, procrastinating to be scrolling through social media instead of working on your business or anything that will kind of take the pain away temporarily. So what we want to do is bring that gratification closer to the current moment so that you're working in the best interest of your future self now, because you're enjoying the rewards of doing it now, as opposed to suffering for years before finally enjoying the fruits of your work. So this is one strategy here. It's basically measuring your progress. What you want to do is create systems where you can visually, again, remember we're going back to environmental, but you want to have a system where you can visually see your progress, where you can actually see how you're improving over time. So you can have a calendar on your wall in your room, and every day can have a box, right? If you're trying to stay consistent, say for instance, you want to be consistent with sales calls with your business, or you want to be consistent with a training program, you're an athlete. Well, what you could do is, say you decided that you're going to stick to something 3 times a week, whether it's coding, hobby, or guitar. What you could do is, every time you succeed, just put a cross on the box on the calendar, on the calendar, right? And do that every time you accomplish the task, right? Now, what this does, again, with designing the environment for long-term change, is that because you have that visual cue, you're more likely to, number one, actually, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, you're just encouraged to see your progress, right? So when you see those crosses, let's say you've crossed like 25 days, you see cross. The 26th day, you're not motivated to go to the gym, but you see that calendar. Well, naturally, what do? Well, because you've made so much progress, you want to keep going, right? So what you're going to do is, you're probably going to go, because you don't want to break the chain. You don't want to break the crosses. You want to keep going because you're encouraged by the progress you're making. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is you actually feel good. Every time you make a cross, you build your self-confidence. You build your small wins. You build that new self-identity. And you just build that confidence. And it just feels good to see that you're making progress. And if you go back to the habit loop we talked about initially, it goes trigger routine. The reward is the feeling of the benefit of progress. And the more you can continue to feed that reward, the more you can cement that loop, then it becomes a hardwired habit that you're able to stay consistent with. So that's basically how you can track your progress to help you. And I'm sure, we see this all the time. Again, a lot of apps, a lot of software, they do the same thing to us, right? To keep us engaged with their devices, to keep us engaged with the stuff they're putting out. So for example, if you play video games, you see the same thing, right? Where they always give you some sort of feedback for your progress throughout the game. You level up, whether it's Pokemon or GTA or FIFA or NFL. There's always video games. All video games do is they basically encourage you to keep taking more actions by continuously giving you feedback on your progress, which obviously you want to improve, right? You want to improve in the game so you stay consistent. So you can use that same strategy to help you stay consistent with your habits. Which brings us to no 0 days. Now, the idea of no 0 days here is you will not go a day without doing something that contributes to your goal. Now, when we mean day, we can mean a pre-agreed amount of days. So let's say, for instance, you've committed to writing 5 days a week. From Monday to Friday, you're going to write every single day. Well, when you pre-commit to that, you will also pre-commit to this idea of no 0 days. So let's say, for instance, Monday to Thursday, you're on your point, you write. Friday, you go out with work colleagues and you get home at 11:30, you're super, super tired. No 0 days basically says you open your laptop, you write a sentence, you close your laptop, and then you go to bed, right? So the idea here is that no matter what, you're doing something. No matter what happens, no matter how tired you feel, you're going to strum a minute of the guitar. You're going to make that short phone call. You're going to send that quick email. You're going to do that push-up. You're going to whatever. You're going to read one word from that book. You're always going to do something. So committing to no 0 days is no day where you do zero, right? And the reason why I really like this strategy here is because it forces you to just get started. And again, this was going back to the general theme of this entire workshop, is it's about consistently getting started over and over again. And so this just trains you to, hey, don't worry too much about the outcome. Don't worry too much about being perfect. Just commit to consistency. Write one sentence, close your laptop, go to bed. At least you did something that day. So again, this is another strategy that will keep you accountable throughout your journey. Let's quickly talk about how to bounce back after you slip up. Now, there's a chance that you might slip up. There's a chance you might relapse. You might, go on a vacation. There's different reasons why we slip up, right? It could be a vacation, and there's so many things. But here's the deal here is that you can see Peter Drucker's quote, unless commitment is made, there are only promises and hopes, but no plans. So we need a plan to get back up after you slip up. I'm sure you heard the quote. It's not how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you can get back up and keep going. So winners are quitters. Winners never quit, but quitters never win, right? This idea that successful people somehow never fail, or they never have setbacks, or they never have moments where they're not consistent. That's not true. It's just top performers just bounce back. And people who don't do well just give up. So how can we bounce back? What's the best strategies to bounce back after slipping up? Well, again, step one, what caused you to slip up? This is so important. A lot of times when we fall back into a bad habit like binge eating, or, you fall back into drinking alcohol or smoking or whatever, well, you need to think, what caused that to happen? Again, think about the entire framework we've talked about throughout this entire workshop. Think about the triggers, the routines, the rewards. What was the trigger? Were you super stressed? Did you just break up from a relationship? Did you just lose your job? Did someone just shout at you? Did you just get into a fight? What was it that triggered those feelings again, or triggered that behavior to happen again? So think about what caused you to slip up. Next thing you need to think about is, what do you need to change? For example, is it your environment, right? If you're trying to stop drink alcohol, but you keep going to venues with dim lights and good music and alcoholic drinks all over the place and friends pressurizing you to drink, well, it's just a matter of time before you relapse to drinking alcohol again. So you need to think about what environmental changes you can make around you, what items you need to move, what people you need to distance from, how you can design your environment basically to make it so that you don't slip up again. And also accountability. If you don't have a feedback system in place, how can you build that in to help you stay consistent? The third thing you need to think about is, what is the best way to restart? Again, typically, let's say you fall off your diet plan, right? You went on a vacation for 3 weeks, or you changed location, or something drastic happened. And during this vacation, you just binged, you just ate and you gained a bunch of weight. Now, what we typically do is we come back, we want to start our routine from scratch. We want to go back to the exact exercise routine. We want to go back to the perfect 100% clean diet or 90% clean diet we had. Well, that is not the best way. The best way to restart is actually go back to the basics, to actually start imperfectly. Yes, your diet might not be 90% clean initially. It might be 50%, where you're only eating 50% clean, and your workouts are probably 50% of the intensity it's supposed to be. But the key point here is you are basically getting started, which is the only thing that really matters at the end of the day. Over time, you can start refining to get back into the form that you were in before. But just like an injured athlete, it's going to take time, So just be patient and just get started, really. It's the key there. Now, remember we talked about this idea of implementation intentions before, with this, the study with the students who basically were very intentional about where they were going to work out and exercise, and how that gave them a 91% probability of exercising. Well, again, we can apply the same thing here in terms of preparing to prevent the slip up, right? Again, this implementation intention studies, first introduced by Goldwitzer in 1999, and who is a psychology professor in New York. And this is another one of his strategies he suggests. So what you do is you have a plan ahead of time that says that you fill in the following sentence. So if temptation, so whatever that temptation is that normally happens to you, then I will bracket strategy. Your strategy being your strategy to or a good alternative basically to counteract that temptation. So as an example, if you visit your friend on Fridays and he typically offers you a pizza because he eats pizza and he wants to offer you pizza, but you don't want to eat pizza because you want to be healthy, well, you can have a plan ahead of time that says, if my friend offers me a pizza, then I will ask for an apple instead. I mean, that's just an example, but I'm sure you can think of alternatives. So kind of think of all the different things that would trigger you to relapse or to slip up, and prepare ahead of time with a plan so that you have an automatic response. Again, this goes into the psychology of taking decisions out of your hands beforehand so that you actually, the words will come out of your mouth without you even having to think about it. You wouldn't have to sit down and think, oh, what that pizza tastes like. You're just like, oh, just give me an apple. It will just be quick because you have a plan in place. So let's move into the final section. Let's talk about bad habits. How to break bad habits holding you back from making progress. So why is this so hard? Why are bad habits so hard to change? The Zig Ziglar quote here: all bad habits start slowly and gradually, and before you have the habit has you. The reason why breaking bad habits can be so difficult is because of two reasons, actually. Firstly, think about the science of how habits work. Remember the loop? Well, what's happened is that you've reinforced a positive benefit from the reward of doing that bad habit for so long that you've actually formed neural pathways in your brain that literally believes that that bad habit is the solution to the trigger. For example, if whenever you're stressed, you binge eat on chocolate or popcorn or something, well, your brain, and you've done that over a certain period of time to the point where your brain associates the positive benefit of stress relief with binge eating, then that is why that sequence exists, because your brain doesn't know any other solution to stress. Because you haven't trained your brain to see other solutions. Your brain just thinks, oh, I'm stressed, let me smoke. Oh, I'm stressed, let me binge eat. Oh, I'm stressed, let me drink alcohol. Right? Oh, I'm stressed, let me just binge watch YouTube videos or something. I'm bored, let me fiddle around on my phone and apps and stuff. So that's why it's difficult, is because your brain doesn't associate. It associates the solution with the bad habit, essentially. So that's one reason why it can be so hard to change. The second reason we've already spoken about, which is self-identity. It's your actions would never exceed your self-image. So if you have a self-image that is perfectly aligned with the bad habit or the bad behavior, then it's going to be hard to change, because subconsciously your beliefs actually align with your actions, which is causing the problem as well. So that's why breaking bad habits can be very complex. Some people are able to break immediately. Some people, it takes a while. Some people have to relapse a couple of times before they finally break through. So that's why change can be so hard. Step 1, again, identify the root cause. What trigger prompted the bad habit? Remember, we went over the 5 types of triggers: location, time, preceding events, people, location, time, preceding events, people, and there's a 5th one, but I'm sure you can go back and check. But basically, what prompted the habit to occur? Okay, yeah, so here we go. But we'll go over that in the workshop exercise next. There's actually been research done by Judson Brewer. He's an addiction expert, and he conducted a 4-week study, and he found that through the use of mindfulness training, he was able to get smokers to a 36% quit rate compared to 18% from just regular therapy. So when we're talking about mindfulness training, we're talking anything from meditation to just simply being aware of what is causing that bad habit. So that urge, that feeling that comes across your body, just being aware of it when it comes can have that kind of impact on you. So here's the exercise. For the next 5 days, I want you to literally take note of your answers to the following questions whenever you want to take action on that bad habit. So if you have a bad habit of biting your nails, smoking, negative thinking, binge eating, anything like that, these are the 5 key questions you want to ask yourself. Where were you when the craving showed up? Oh, well, I was in the bar and there was nice music. Okay, cool. At what point during the day does this happen? So for you, it could be lunchtime. Maybe you've had a stressful morning of work. Now you're stressed and you want to relieve that stress. Or it could be the end of the day. You've had a stressful day of work. You're stressed and you want to relieve that stress. What is your emotional state? Are you stressed? Are you bored? Are you tired? Are you lonely? Who are you with? Who is around you? Are your friends around you? Are you alone? And what happened before you felt this way? Basically, what was an event that happened? Did someone step on your shoes? Did someone shout at you? Did someone abuse you? Did someone smile at you? I mean, what happened before? Take notes of these 5 things and become more aware of what was actually triggering this bad habit to occur. So you maybe you have a habit of smoking at lunchtime. Well, you might discover that the trigger for that actually is that you're feeling lonely. Maybe you want to connect with people, plus you're stressed. And so what smoking does for you is, number one, it helps you to relieve that stress, but it also helps you connect with other smokers as well. So you're actually trying to solve 2 things. You're trying to solve a loneliness issue and a stress issue. Just being aware can already begin the process of change. The best strategy is to replace the bad habit with a good one. So we want to think about what is a good alternative that will help you solve the root cause. And the root cause is the trigger. Now, if you remember before, I gave the example of journaling and stress. Well, you can kind of think, okay, once you understand what your trigger is, so you say, okay, my trigger is stress. Okay, whenever I feel stressed, I do this, right? Well, you can start to think, what is a good alternative that can give you relief from that trigger that causes the behavior? So I gave the example of journaling and how research has shown therapeutic writing, which is journaling, can help you relieve stress. So what you could do is experiment with journaling whenever you feel stressed. And if it works and you get that stress relief, all you need to do is continue to repeat that behavior and over again until it becomes a habit, right? So here we're taking the path of least resistance. You don't want to fight with the enemy. You don't want to fight with the devil. You want to step away from the ring and let God fight the devil, right? If you want to use figurative terms like that. So in other words, you just want to take the path of least resistance and just replace the bad habit. So here's another workshop exercise. I want you to write 2 lists. So 1 for the bad habits you have and 2 for good alternatives. But you want to make sure that the alternative satisfies that trigger, whether it's stress or boredom or loneliness. So you have the bad habit, for instance, of browsing through social media feeds. You discover that the trigger is that you're bored. The good alternative to that could be reading a book that you've been wanting to read. So you solve that issue of boredom with something that's more productive. You have the bad habit of smoking during lunch break. You notice the trigger is stress. Well, you could go for a walk to de-stress. And you could change your environment, right? If you've got a messy desk, clean up the desk. Make sure your environment is also not looking stressful as well. So this is another effective strategy to break a bad habit. You want to think about your future self as well. So you can see this quote by Brian McGill. The secret to permanently breaking any bad habit is to love something greater than the habit. So you want to think about what are the long-term consequences of the bad habit? What is the consequence of you continuing to do this? You actually want to visualize that. You know, if you're someone who smokes a lot, then you want to think about the effect that could have on your health, seeing yourself in the hospital, your family dying early, cancer. But you really want to not just think about it, but emotionally connect with the pain that would happen. Remember, we talked about staying motivated with stakes. Well, it's the same thing here, using stakes to keep yourself away from bad behavior. People have a tendency to avoid pain and run towards pleasure. A lot of times people do things not because they like to do it, but because they're trying to avoid the pain of the consequences of not doing it. So think about the long-term negative consequences of a bad habit and use the environment to put visual cues. If you have to put pictures around your room that remind you that smoking leads to early death, then do so. Do whatever you need to do to remind yourself of the long-term negative consequences. And just a quick note here. Overnight success is the wrong mindset. You cannot expect to break a bad habit you've developed since the age of 18. You're 35 now. So that's well over 10 years of ingrained bad behavior. You cannot expect that to disappear overnight. It can, like Bill Wilson with his alcohol addiction. And it may not. But again, the mindset here is, I'm just going to show up, do my 1% every day, and let the results take care of themselves when they do. The bamboo seed is not worried about when. He's not worried about how long. He's just being a bamboo seed. Feed it, getting watered every day. And it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of consistency and a matter of time before you break free. So let's talk about, now we finished the main section of the workshop, the main 3. So now you should have a ton of strategies actually. Yeah, you should have strategies to create new habits. You should have strategies to stick to habits over the long term. You should have strategies to break bad habits. But again, I have more stuff for you. So this is the bonus round. I have 3 additional ideas to help you stick to your goals. These ideas is kind of like a nitro boost. I don't know if you've ever seen like car video games and stuff. It's that, or if you play Mario, you know, like the mushroom that you eat and it makes you bigger, right? So I just want to give you these extra things just to kind of just give you that extra boost, that extra knowledge you need. So these are 3 additional ideas you can use. And let's begin. So first idea is manage your energy, not your time, right? So a lot of times we have difficulty taking action because we don't have the energy to. But we spend all our time talking about, time management. I need to block in schedule here, schedule this. Well, how are you going to act on a habit? If say you want to exercise, when you get home at 9, you don't have the energy to, right? How are you going to make a habit of writing consistently if you try and write at 9 p.m. and you're exhausted? You don't have the energy to. And remember before we talked about this concept of hot and cold triggers? Well, it is cold to place a trigger in front of you when you're tired. It's like you're lying down in your bed, like watching a Netflix movie. You get a reminder saying, go to the gym. Well, you're tired. That's not the right time and it doesn't match. So it's going to be difficult to take action. So this is very important because we always have a tendency to just sporadically schedule our day. If you really want to prioritize properly, you need to think about how your energy levels are and how you can match the most important things you want to do when you have the most energy. So this first comes from the work of Tony Schwartz in his book, The Powerful Engagement. Again, I'll leave that in the links below. But basically, first it talks about our what is called our energy cycles throughout the day. It's called the circadian rhythm. And this is not the circadian rhythm right now on the screen. I'll come to this in a second. The circadian rhythm basically shows how we go up and down throughout the entire day. We have periods of peak energy levels, periods of low energy levels, and it goes up and down. And then we have that slump around mid-afternoon, that post-lunch slump where you just can't be bothered to do anything. It picks up a little bit and so on and so forth. Now, in Tony Schwartz's book, The Powerful Engagement, he talks about this ultradian performance rhythm. And he talks about how elite athletes and top performers across different fields, we're talking business, arts, everything, they work in cycles. So they work in cycles where they go 90 minutes, they go hard, they work intense. Then they take 20 minutes off, 20 to 30 minutes off. Another 90 minutes, then they take 20 to 30 minutes off. So they work in cycles, they work in sprints, in other words. So in his quotes, he says, we too must learn to live our own lives as a series of sprints, fully engaging for periods of time, and fully disengaging and seeking renewal before jumping back into the fray. So if you want to perform better, if you want to improve your productivity, then you need to think about how you can basically introduce periods of sprinting and periods of rest, periods of sprinting and periods of recovery. What we typically do is we just sit down for a large block of time and we just drain all our energy. Well, that's not the most productive or efficient way of going about things. So you want to think about when you perform best at your work. So do you know the times of the day when you are most productive? So for example, with myself, I'm most productive around 9 a.m. in the morning, between 9 and 12. And in that time space, I protect with my life because I turn off my phone. My phone's not on. I don't have any distractions around me. That is my precious time. That is when I have the most energy. That is when I'm the most creative. That is when I get the most work done. Which brings me to this myth of the morning routine, right? Everyone's talking about the morning routine. Successful people, they wake up at 5 a.m. They wake up at 4 a.m. They wake up at 2:30 a.m. As a matter of fact, successful people sleep, like they sleep at 2 and then they sleep for like 3 hours and then they wake up at 5 a.m. And then, I mean, there's so many things going on. The truth is, find what works for you. You literally have to find, your body is different. Your energy cycles are different. Your genetics are different. So when do you work best? I know people who work best working after lunch. That's their peak period. Some people work best in the evening. That's their peak period, right? Not everyone is a morning person. Not everyone needs to work in the morning. As a matter of fact, myself personally, I work better in a fasted state. So I work better when I don't have food in my system, because I find if I have breakfast and then I work, then my energy levels are just lower, and I feel, because of the digestion, obviously it's sucking that energy from me that I could be putting into my work. But when I work in an empty stomach, I'm just more high alert and more focused. But that works for me. It might not work for you. So you need to experiment and find what works for you. So here's an exercise you can do over the next 5 days. Just keep an energy journal of every single day, and preferably every hour. Yes, I know it's a bit tedious, but it will really pay off, because what will happen is you will be able to take note of how you feel every hour. Okay, do you feel energetic? Do you feel inspired? Do you feel focused? Do you feel distracted? Right? A lot of times we always try and plan around avoiding things when we don't have the energy to. You're more likely to resist temptation when you have energy, right? You're more likely to be productive when you have energy. So why not just match, right? Schedule around your energy levels. So if your most important task today is to finish a report, or if your most important task today is to launch a product for your business or to write a page of your novel, well, what you can do is think about how you can match your time window when you're most productive, we have the most energy, with that habit that you're trying to build or that task you're trying to complete. Then you can think about when you have the weakest energy or the lowest energy, maybe your energy levels dip around between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. And then you can schedule all your mundane, least important things in that time block. Checking your emails, gossiping, or whatever you do. I don't know. So that is that there. Recovery is not an option. A lot of times we think, downtime, taking time away from work, taking time away from the screen, exercising, relaxing. We think that is a choice. Well, it's not a choice. Recovery is non-negotiable. You have to find a way to schedule recovery into your routine, especially if you're working in sprints. If you're studying for exams, you could do a 90-minute sprint, build in that recovery of 30 minutes, and then sprint again for 90 minutes. This is something Cal Newport talks about as well. He's also an author. He wrote a book called Deep Work, about just productivity and that kind of thing. So you need to think about how you can build in that schedule or recovery into your schedule as well. Because again, it's a sprint, rest, sprint again. We always hear the saying, go hard and go home. Well, I disagree with that. I say go hard, then go home, right? You sprint, recover, repeat again. You push yourself to the max, you take time off, and you repeat again. And that way, again, you're able to get your 1% reps every day. And over 232 days, you're going to be 10 times better at what you do. Strategy 2, stop procrastinating by reducing the deadline. So this is pulled from the work of Timothy Pichel. He's a procrastination expert. He wrote the book called The Procrastination Equation. But basically, a lot of times we don't really take into account how long it's going to take to complete a task as the reason for why we procrastinate. We always think, procrastinating because of my iPhone or Instagram or I'm lazy. Well, it could also be because what you have to deliver is too far ahead, right? Okay, so if you remember in college, or if you're currently a student, you probably can relate to this. So here we go. You see, you got 30 days to a report to hand in, right? It's an important report. It's going to contribute to your grades in university. So because you think you have time, you might spend the first couple of days, you go on holiday, you chill with your friends, you go to the beach, just have fun, right? Then let's say, I don't know, 2 weeks before the report is due, you might actually pretend to yourself you're going to do some work. So you will sit down, and instead of working, you just mess around, Facebook. Yeah, I still got time. It's cool, right? And then what do? A day before the report is required, we all of a sudden have this boost of energy and urgency. And that's when we complete the report, with a can of Red Bull, 3 a.m. in the morning. We get it done. The work is subpar, but we managed to finish it. It's, it's the all-nighter. We've probably all had that once in a while, where we delay till the day before the paper is supposed to be handed in before actually acting on it. So rather than do that or wait for that to happen, why not make it painful to procrastinate by reducing the deadline? So what you can do is, if you have something to deliver, let's say you're giving yourself 1 year to write a novel. Well, that 1 year tricks your brain to think it can just start faffing around now. So why not just create mini deadlines in between? Let's say you say, in 1 week, I want to write 200 words. By the next month, I want to have delivered my draft to this person, or have them read the first chapter. So what you can do is break that big deadline into mini deadlines, so that it makes it, you have that, you basically make it more painful to procrastinate, essentially. You want to make it so painful to procrastinate that it's just not enjoyable to procrastinate, that you would rather just take action. It's less painful to take action. It's not that taking action isn't painful. It's just less painful than procrastinating, right? And then if you couple that with just announcing it to the public, just telling people, hey, this is what I'm doing, and you tell them the deadline. So for example, with me, every Monday and Thursday, I publish an article on my website, mayooshin.com. Now, because I've made that public announcement, I'm held accountable, and I've got mini deadlines. So every Monday and Thursday, I have to release something. It's a perpetual deadline that is out in the public, and it is painful because if I don't release something, I violate integrity, which I value daily. So that's how you can reduce the time delay to get stuff done. The third and final strategy is to boost your willpower. Now, these concepts come from Kelly McGonigal in her book Willpower Instinct. Links to resources below. But essentially, your willpower actually determines your ability to resist temptation, i.e. delay gratification, and stay consistent with your goals. Now, your willpower is literally like a muscle. Just like you lift weights, if you do, it's like a muscle, right? You can get stronger, get weaker. You can also deplete your willpower throughout the day. Although this is something that is contested between scientists, but the general idea is just to be careful, because the more decisions you make throughout the day, the less willpower you will have, which is why the worst time to make a critical decision is when you're tired. The worst time to make a critical decision is at the end of a day when you've made a lot of decisions that have made you tired. So, with that being said, you want to prioritize. Multitasking is a recipe to destroy your willpower quickly, right? We try and do so many things at the same time. Well, when you do that, you're basically affecting your willpower. You're being unproductive. What you could do instead to find your priorities, we've spoken about this, is Focus on your keystone habit. Focus on what's that one thing I can focus on and exert my willpower on or make decisions with that just makes everything easier. On that note, one of the biggest enemies to willpower is stress. And the more stressed you are, the less energy you have, the less willpower you have to make good decisions. If you notice carefully, the times when you do make bad decisions, to eat that cookie, to smoke, to drink, to make a bad decision, it's typically when you're stressed. It's typically when you don't have energy. So we want to think about how to reduce stress. And we've talked about different strategies throughout this workshop about designing your environment to reduce stress. But here are just a couple of ideas, more scientifically proven anyway. If you're getting less than 6 hours of sleep a night, you will most likely struggle with stress and less energy to resist temptation when it's presented to you. Likewise, again, we spoke about exercise and how exercise can help you develop willpower. The foods you consume also affect your ability to resist temptation. For example, when you consume processed foods, foods that are not natural, they actually cause stress to your adrenal glands, and that can just cause stress in general, which causes more issues. And I've just given you examples of designing your environment. Think about environments where you're typically de-stressed, relaxed, and think about how you can recreate your own home or your space where you work so that, well, actually, no, you don't want to do that during work, but you want to do it. You want to recreate places where you want to relax so that they emulate those places. So play soothing music, change your clothes to something that's more comfortable, clean your surroundings, and so on. Another way to build your willpower is to use the words don't rather than can't. So in the Journal of Consumer Research, there was actually a research study where they had groups of students. Now, they had two groups. And during the research, they would present the students with the form of temptation, right? It could be chocolate or something. And they told one group of them to say, I don't. X. So X being the temptation. So I don't eat chocolate. I don't do this. I don't. The other group was to say, I can't. So I can't eat this. I can't do this. So they were told to repeat this over and over and over again. Now, the people used in the studies were told to leave the room and, that's it, you're done. Go to a table and basically check out to say you've finished the study. And on the way out of the door, there was a researcher waiting for them with in one hand, he was holding a chocolate candy bar. In the other hand, he was holding a granola bar. And he just asked them, say, what do you want on your way out? What they found is that the people who used the word I can't during the studies, 68% of them chose the chocolate candy bar. But the people who use I don't, 36% of them chose the candy bar. In other words, by simply training their mind to use empowering words like don't instead of can't, because can't is almost like you're helpless, like you have no willpower. By simply using a stronger word like I don't, they had doubled the probability of resisting temptation. And vice versa, you have doubled the odds of falling into temptation or not having willpower by literally using the words can't, by using words that make you selfless, not selfless, make you helpless, essentially. So be careful how you speak, be careful how you refer to the problems you have, because it can affect your willpower and your ability to resist. Here's another strategy. Just wait for 3 minutes. Next time you feel that urge to make a bad decision, could be whatever, shouting at someone. It could be just not following through on something you set out to do. When you have that urge, calm down, inhale, exhale, and just wait for 3 minutes before you make a decision. This will give you time to really decide on what to do next. Here's another strategy. You want to think cold. Now, this comes from the work of Walter Mischel. Basically, he was a researcher at Stanford University, and he conducted some research in 1960s called the marshmallow experiment. Now, just to give you a quick overview, basically what it is that he would get some kids aged between 3 and 5 into a room. There's no distractions in the room. There was a table. He would pull up a table, sit the kid in front of the table, but it had a twist. Basically, there would be a marshmallow on that table and a bell. And he would tell the kid, listen, if you eat this marshmallow now, that's cool. Just press the bell, we'll come in, you can have the marshmallow. But if you wait for 15 minutes, I think it was, if you wait for 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, then we will give you another marshmallow so you can have 2. So the idea here was to test delayed gratification, the ability to resist temptation, essentially, because you can either have 1 now and enjoy the instant gratification, or you can have 2 down the line if you just delay gratification. So he conducted this experiment, and a couple of kids didn't do too well. Some of them just immediately, the researcher left the room, they just grabbed the marshmallow and just ate straight away. They didn't even wait. And the reason for that was because they were thinking hot. Now, when you think hot, it's basically, it taps into emotional kind of thinking, where you're looking at the temptation from the perspective of what it would taste like. The sweet taste. Anything that kind of drives that emotion of impulsive action. You want to have a cigarette, you're thinking, how it will feel to just smoke and the relief you would get. So you're thinking hot, right? So a lot of kids were thinking hot, and that's why they just grabbed the marshmallow. They couldn't resist. So what Mischel tested was, okay, let me try and get them to think about something cold. So cold is the opposite of hot. Hot basically brings up those emotions of impulsiveness, emotions. Cold kind of cools it off. It's more abstract. It's more reflective. So he told them, okay, you know what? Why don't you think about this marshmallow as a picture? So he ran through the experiment with some of these kids again. And guess what? These kids who could barely make a couple of minutes the first time round, this time when they were told to visualize the marshmallow as a picture, they lasted for 18 minutes. They actually completed the experiment successfully. Now, he took the test one step further. He said, let me actually verbalize the hot and the cold thinking to the kids and see what happens. So to one group of kids, he would use hot thinking. So he would say, just think about how yummy and tasty this marshmallow. Think about how sticky and chewy it would feel, just to arouse those emotions within them. The other group, he told them to think abstract. He says, just think about the shape, think about the texture, just very bland, descriptive use of words. The group that was told to think hot thinking, they only lasted for 15 minutes. The group told to think cool or cold lasted for 13 minutes. So here again, you can see the power of just a shift in language and a shift in thinking and a shift in how you perceive what is in front of you and how that can improve your ability to delay gratification. So here's the final thoughts as we come to a close. Just put in your reps. This has been the general theme of this workshop. I know I've gone slightly over time, but that's, just our passion and our just wanting to give you as much value as possible. So I hope you've really been getting a lot of value from this. But this is just the general idea. Put in your reps. We live in a society where we're so obsessed about perfection and quality, but I'd like to propose actually quantity matters more. And here's why. There's a short story about a ceramics teacher. I think it was actually a short experiment. And the ceramics teacher basically divided a classroom into two. Now, on the left side, he told the students to basically focus on producing as much quantity of ceramic pots as they can. And then he gave them some measurements and some weights that they had to complete. The other group of students, he told them to focus on quality and producing the best, beautiful ceramics pot they can. This went on for a while. Then he collected all the works together. And guess what? The works of highest quality came from the quantity group. So the people who are focused on simply putting in the reps, simply focused on production, actually produced better quality in the end than the group who focused on producing quality. And the reason is the quality group was so focused on being perfect. They didn't think about how to get started. We've spoken about that throughout this entire workshop. They were just focused on the perfect thing to do, the perfect way to approach things. And because of that, they just did not put in their reps, did not put in their 1% every day, right? The quantity group, on the other hand, simply just churned out work. And because they were consistent, they learned from their mistakes, they adapted, and they kept improving. And as a result, over time, because they put in more reps, more 1%, they were better than the other group. So if there's one takeaway you want to take away from this, is just put in your reps. Over time, small decisions, small habits, and small changes make a massive difference. And with that being said, just do it. Nike was right in this respect. You cannot leave footprints in the sands of time if you're thinking on your butt. And who wants to leave butt prints in the sands of time? And this is true. Better to make moves, better to take action, better to do something than just stay still. So I hope that everything that I presented to you throughout this workshop has been useful. Thank you for attending. If you know anyone who would find this useful, feel free to show them where they can get this workshop from as well. And remember, pick one thing to focus on. Focus on getting started. Focus on putting your reps in. And just know, just like the bamboo seed, that it's just a matter of time before you see the results of your hard work. Thank you.
Hi, it's Mayo here. Just want to thank you again for going through the entire workshop. I know may have run over it just a little bit, but if you have any questions or you want to ask, you want to give me any feedback on how you thought the workshop was, what could have been improved, what you feel like I could have included and stuff, feel free to get in touch with me via the website or just my email. And if you know anyone who would also benefit from this, feel free to share with them as well. So I'd really like to hear from you, get your feedback. But otherwise, I wish you the best of luck in your future plans and hope to speak to you soon. So take care.